Good morning, Facebook. It's Jen T. Grace here, founder of Publisher Purpose, and I'm with my co-pilot Peaches this morning. Welcome to day 2 of our author lab, which I am quite excited about. We're going to have a very busy, content-packed session this morning. So if you are here, I would love for you to post in the comments where you are, where you're located, what you're writing about, who it is, all of that fun information as we did yesterday. If this morning is your first time joining us, welcome. Welcome. I think we should have a good day this morning. And if you were watching this on the replay, what you can do is you can fast forward this video about 9 minutes or so. So for anyone who is here live, I start about 5 minutes before the hour, and I don't start the content until about 5 minutes past the hour, which gives ample amount of time for people to kind of get in, get situated, allow Facebook to notify you that, hey, we're live, because sometimes it can take a little bit of time for Facebook to alert people that the video is live and up and running. So I give it a good 10 minutes or so. And so we can just mingle and chat in the meantime. But if you are watching this on replay, feel free to go to the 05 mark, whether it's 7:05 your time, 8:05, 9:05, 10:05, just head on over to that 5-minute pass mark. In the meantime, you can see Peaches sitting here with me this morning. She's my co-pilot. I may write a children's book called It's Always Peaches because she is a destructive little terror and she likes to be my co-pilot on videos on a regular basis. So you may have already met her before. You might be able to hear her purring. So I feel like it's a Monday morning. Not sure how anyone is feeling about the fact that it is a Monday morning. But this is a good way, in my opinion, of course, I'm going to be biased about this, but in my opinion, it's a good way to start the day, talking about your book, talking about your progress, what you can do, all of that fun, amazing stuff. And so I'm going to hang tight. I will wait a couple of minutes before I get into the announcement. So if you are here and you are watching, please post in the comments that you're here, because over the course of our time together, the seven days, and then we have those 3 kind of extra days the following week, I really get to know who you are and what you're working on and what your book is about. And so sometimes just gotta let me know that you're here, and then I can kind of modify my examples and what I say, knowing who is or is not watching. So I'm in my office today, which is beautiful, and you can see that the lighting is significantly better than it was yesterday. Yesterday, as I mentioned, I was in Philadelphia on my way back to Connecticut, so I am back home in my actual office where I have all of my things, including 3 monitors to have all of the things on to share information with you, because we're going to have a very busy day. For sure. And I know that we have some folks coming in. So just as a reminder, if you are watching this through Facebook, there's a chance I might not be able to see your name. I do have Facebook open on a different monitor today, so hopefully that will help. If you are on YouTube, yesterday I seemed to be able to see all of the comments and names from people on YouTube. So I see that people are starting to get in. Facebook takes a few minutes to kind of let people know that the video is live, which is why I start a good at least 5 minutes early. Sometimes I start earlier than that. You do not have to get here any faster than the 10 o'clock Eastern time frame, but sometimes it can take 5 or 10 minutes just for Facebook to let you know that I'm even live. So who do we have with us this morning? You have not missed anything. It's just me rambling while we wait to start. We'll start at 5 minutes past. So if you need to run and grab something, you will not miss anything. I'm just going to kind of go through a couple of announcements again, things like that. All right, let's see. So I see somebody said hi. Good morning. I'm not entirely sure I can see who it is because you were on Facebook. Let me see if I can see it. I don't know if you can hear my, oh, I don't want to say her name, but one of the robots. She's in the background telling me the weather right now. Good morning, John. Fantastic. Oh, it's Rebecca. Hey, Rebecca. Love it. Are you on the move this morning? Are you walking again this morning? It's a great way for a Sunday morning to be, is walking and stretching and getting it all out. Let's see. I'm just checking a couple of things. A lot of comments yesterday. So while we're waiting for other people to join, as I mentioned, I'm going to start at 5 minutes past just to give people time to get here, because Facebook inevitably sometimes takes a bit before people are able to see, like, get the notification that says that this video is live. So with that being said, I like to give people a few minutes to get here. Not walking today, positioned at the laptop. Nice, nice. Good morning. All right, we got people streaming in. And so it's another mixed crowd from Facebook and YouTube, just kind of a combination of both. This is the first workshop I'm doing where it's even available via YouTube. And it seems to be working for some folks. And if you prefer to be on YouTube watching this, you can in the guide section or under the event itself. There's a link. If you click that, it'll be to the YouTube video itself. But either way, I can see your comments. It's a 50-50 whether or not I can see your name, but that is okay. I would prefer to be able to see them, but I've got to have to work with the resources that Facebook provides. So how is everyone feeling about yesterday? Yesterday was a more low key, I don't want to say low key, because it still required a little bit of thought, but not as intense as today, maybe, for some of you. So how are you feeling after just kind of thinking about your, why you're writing this book and the purpose of your book? And did you have any different kind of clarity on, how what you thought it was versus what you've identified that it is now? All right, so I have Facebook open on the other screen, so now I can see that it was Patty that said good morning, and now Midge. Good morning. Fantastic. All right. We're going to start in 2 minutes. So while I guess we wait for some folks to join us, I'll run through I'm going to keep reminding you of these just kind of announcements / reminders, just because the workbook in particular is really, really helpful. So if you have not downloaded it, please go ahead and do so. It will be very, very helpful to kind of follow through the remainder of this process. And so, especially today. So I'm going to show some slides in today's presentation in regards to target readers, and it's going to be a lot of information, but all of that information is housed in the workbook. So I'm going to go through pretty high level because we have about 30 minutes to get into the meat of what we want to discuss. And then I will stay on because I'm now back in my own office and I'm not traveling, having to kind of close and leave like I did yesterday. So I will stay on after, so that way I can answer additional questions that you have. But I will, for the sake of honoring everyone's time, because I know many of you blocked out this 30 minutes, there's a lot to cover in 30 minutes. So I'm going to do my best. But when you need to reference back to it, you can always come back to this video, replay it, because it will be in the guide section, and you can, start it. Like, if you just hopped onto Facebook now or YouTube now, because it's live, you can't kind of go back and start. But once it's done and it's over, you can go back and rewatch it at any point in time. And so I would grab the workbook because it has all of the information listed out, especially for today's session. And then it will also be very helpful for day 4. So there's a lot of information that is going to be coming your way, which, as I mentioned yesterday, for those of you who were here yesterday, it sequentially builds as we go through together. It may seem like it's in a very weird order at first because you don't know what's coming next, really, but I promise you it is very, very sequential, and everything's going to build on each other. And so by the end of this, everything's going to make so much more sense. I promise. Let's see. I write because my soul tells me to. I'm feeling energized, and I'm excited to dig into my whys. I love it, Rebecca. It's awesome. All right, so we are on day 2. So we're going to talk about target readers today. And it's a lot. I'm not going to lie. It's going to be a lot of information. So I'm going to see if we have good technology today. And it's so much easier working from a computer with 3 monitors versus a laptop beside a lamp without a shade on it, like I did yesterday. But you got to make do with what you got. So I will continue to say this: use the workbook, use the workbook, use the workbook. On the screen down here, you can see, actually, I'm going to stop this banner from moving so it's not distracting. If you are in the Facebook group itself, the top navigation bar should look something similar like this. The workbook is directly at the top of the guide section. So please, by all means, go ahead and grab that. Okay, so we're already off to a good start with the animation of the slides. Okay, so it would behoove you to take just a moment to go grab the workbook, because this will make sense in just a minute if you do so. And if anyone's having problems, actually, if you want to even post in the comments if you have already downloaded the workbook, that would be fantastic. I'm going to pull it up now myself while we're doing this, but just go grab it. You might be on your phone, so it might be difficult. If you're on your phone, come back to it after, but it will definitely help you for sure to have the workbook handy, because the purpose of what we're doing here today is, when we know with really, really epic clarity, if you will, when we know who we are writing for, so much of this will make a significant amount more sense. So, for example, yesterday we talked about the why you're writing this book and the purpose behind what you're writing. Knowing those two things, as I was talking about yesterday, when you have that moment of, you have a high highs or low lows, because this whole process can be an emotional roller coaster for sure. Even if you're not writing about something that's emotional, but if you are writing about something emotional, it feels a little bit even more intense. And so when we have the why and we have our purpose and we're anchored into what that is, when we have those moments of self-doubt, criticism, somebody in our immediate circle kind of says something that feels unsupportive, we can go back to those statements and say, yes, this is why I'm doing it, and it's important for me to push ahead, to plow forward. So when we know that, it's really, really powerful. On the writing side of all of this, so the why and the purpose is very much around kind of the mindset side. But on the writing side, when we know exactly who we are writing for, we have a similar outcome. Because what can happen is, if you're writing for too many people and too many target readers, it can get very diluted, it can get very messy. And what ends up happening is that we're not writing for anyone in particular. And so I'm curious now, if you would like to post in the comments for me, who here feels like they have a good handle on who their target reader is. It doesn't have to be, I'm confident if you have not done a target reader exercise before, like the one I'm about to show you, you do not have like super, super deep levels of clarity, but you might have that top rung of clarity. And that's truly all you need to go deeper into this. So I'm curious, if you don't mind, to just post in here, even a simple yes or no, like, yes, I know who my target market is. No, I don't. And if you feel compelled to share with everyone else who your target reader is, that would be fantastic. And I will say, as we start to go through these target reader data points, not all of them will apply. So there's going to be things that are applicable for some, not for others. And there's also a little bit of crossover in some of these buckets. All right, my only clarity is our LGBT community is my target to begin with. Okay, that's a good starting point, because we have to be thinking about who in a number of different ways. So if we say there's just a very kind of marketing adage of, if you're marketing to everyone, you're speaking to no one. And that's entirely the case with this as well. So we want to be really, really clear. And what I find is that folks tend to have a concern that if they're writing for too specific of a person, that you're going to alienate readers. But that is not typically what happens. So the more narrow and the more niche you can be writing for, the better, because it'll help you from a marketing standpoint, which is the whole other half of the battle when it comes to, you have the writing of your book, which you can't do anything else until the book is written. Then you have the publishing process of the book and have to figure out how to navigate that. And then you have the marketing of the book. And so the marketing of the book is really probably one of the biggest pieces of all of this, because all of the work that you've done through the writing and through the publishing, none of that really matters unless you have a concrete strategy for how you're going to reach your end reader. And so when we know who the end reader is from the beginning, not only can we write specifically to them, but we will also know exactly how we can market to them down the road a little bit further at a later date. Okay, so there's some saying, I don't know who my target reader is. Some are saying, I know that my target reader caregivers. I can also see that this book could also branch out to teens, ministers, parents, etc. I have a pretty high level moms of young kids, probably mostly suburban, ages 30 to 40, who are frustrated with politics, yet have anxiety about negative ways policy. Yeah, Cynthia, you have really good clarity on who your target reader is, which I'm not surprised by. So when we think about these things, what we want to be doing, and this is going to sound super creepy, and this is my first suggestion of the day for you, is like, so Cynthia has a really good kind of clarity on who that target reader is. Okay, so and we'll use you as an example. So we have 30 to 4-year-old mothers who are probably in a suburban area and who are feeling frustrated by politics, but have anxiety about how the social aspect of politics are affecting their children and their families. Okay? That is, to me, that is really, really clear. What you can do is, if you are struggling, and Cynthia, we're already in the publishing process. And so for everybody else's benefit, Cynthia is working with PYP on getting her book published. It'll be out in early 2022. It's going to be amazing. And in this case, you already have yours written, but from a marketing standpoint, this can also somewhat apply too. Is I encourage you to, and this is for everybody, to print out a picture. I told you this was going to be creepy. Print out a picture of someone in your life, or it could be a celebrity, it could be somebody that you know, it could be a client that you have, it could truly be anybody. Print out their picture and post it wherever it is that you are writing your book. So if you're writing on a desktop, print it out, tape it to your computer monitor. If you're doing it, on a laptop, put it on a post-it note, stick it on your monitor, just something to remind you that you're talking and you're writing for that one particular person. The application to the marketing is the same thing. Like, from a marketing standpoint, you're trying to market to that person, so you can start to put yourself in their shoes to think, if I were that person, if I were my target reader, where would I be? What do I do? What do I think? How do I behave? What are those demographic points where, in your case, Cynthia, the ages, the location, the politics, all of that kind of falls under the demographic data bucket. So, and geography in some cases is important too. So when we know exactly who we're writing for, what this does for us is it helps us create examples, it helps us share stories, it helps us provide information in a way that is very, very specifically written to your target reader. So if I were to use an example of, so say, just this is a very kind of very, very broad example, but just imagine that maybe I'm writing a book that is really kind of academic. So it's very, I'm teaching something. It's almost like a dissertation. It's a lot of thought leadership. It's high level. It's cerebral. It's all of these things. If I'm writing that book, because that's my style of writing, I feel like I'm an academic. I have all these things. It is going to be written for other people who are also likely academics, who are looking for theory and to kind of like noodle on this information, very high, very intellectual. But if the target reader for that book were someone who is your average everyday layperson, like the majority of us on this call right now, but you as the author wrote it in such a high level academic way, you are 100% missing the mark, because you will have written it so far above what your target reader's comprehension levels are that you will lose them and they will not finish reading the remainder of your book. And so this is why we have to really be thinking about, who are we writing for? what type of language would they use? What type of examples are going to relate with them? Another example could just be age related, right? So if you're writing a book for people who, so someone in here is writing a book about caregiving. So when we're talking about caregiving, if you're talking about caregiving, and caregiving can be sliced in a dozen different directions, but if we're talking about caregiving with folks who are in their 70s, 80s, or 90s, for example, that would be a different type of caregiving than someone who might be caregiving for a child with a disability, or with someone who might have had some kind, had some kind of traumatic brain injury, or someone who has had some kind of significant kind of accident. And so they might be significantly younger. The caregiving, again, how you care for somebody who had an accident that physically harmed them, or provide or created some kind of issues around their mental health and their cognitive abilities, versus someone who's aging, the caregiving tactics are likely going to still be similar in the same, but the messaging and how you would frame those tactics would be very different, because someone who's caring for a parent who is 90 versus someone who is caring for a spouse who is in a serious accident are going to be very different phases of their lives, and different circumstances have brought them to the place that they're in. And so this is why it's so important to be writing really specific for who we're writing for. So for the person, is it Patty? I feel like I can't see the names again. Who's writing about caregiving, like in more particular terms, who in the caregiving space are you writing for? If you want to put that in the comments, that would be fantastic. So these are just kind of some big high level examples. This is a big nut to crack, I'm not going to lie. And so when we think, let me go back for a sec. So we have geographic, demographic, psychographic, and behavioral. These are 4 kind of buckets that we can think about from a target reader standpoint. As I said, some of this will not apply. So when you go into the workbook to do this exercise, which I would block out probably a solid hour of your time to do, you don't have to have this complete in order for tomorrow's content to make sense, because tomorrow we're gonna switch gears, but today and yesterday really will be kind of propelling what comes next. But when we think about target readers, they break out into these 4 buckets. So if we just look at the geographic bucket, for some people this matters, for other people it does not matter in the least. I would say, and these are just a couple bullet points. There are so many other ways you can do this. So you could just head on over to Google and type in something to the effect of, what type of geographic data do I need to know for a target market, or target market geographic data? And I would do target market versus target reader, because target market speaks more to the marketing side of things that you can apply to a reader standpoint. When you look for target reader information, a lot of times it's not thought about strategically enough from a marketing standpoint. So I would just use the word target market. So in this case, the urban versus suburban, a lot of times that does matter with books. And I know Cynthia specifically had already mentioned likely suburban. It doesn't mean that it's not going to be people in urban areas, but in this case, you're feeling like it's most likely going to be suburban people. And so when we look in here, some of this matters, some of it does not matter. And so take it with a grain of salt. And these are just a couple bullet points in the workbook itself. There are many, many more for each of these sections. Demographic data. This is where so there's 2 of these buckets that are really, really important. The demographic data bucket is important. And so again, like I was talking about, kind of, I don't want to say education level necessarily, but the example I was using before about like academics and intellectuals versus kind of the lay person, education level may not actually be the deciding factor over whether someone is an intellectual person, because they could be exceptionally smart, super intellectual, and not have a single degree beyond high school. And that's perfectly fine. But sometimes it's easy, for the sake of kind of dissecting our buckets, to just kind of say, all right, education level, if I am writing to a very specific academic crowd, maybe I have to say that my target demographic are people with PhDs. And that may or may not fully apply, but for the sake of now and just trying to wrap your head around the who it is that you're writing for, that might be an easy way to kind of slice people apart. It could be, occupation or employment. It could be, are they a business owner? Are they self-employed? Are they, do they work for a large institution? Do they work for a small business? That might matter for your particular market. It might not matter. So again, take all of these with a grain of salt because it's really a little bit all over the map in terms of what does or does not apply to you in your book in particular. And then I think generations is also something that's really important. Sometimes books, it doesn't really matter what generation somebody is in. And I know that there's a number of people in here who are writing about trauma. There's someone who's writing about substance abuse related issues. And so in those cases, the generation itself might not be a big factor. And when they aren't, you just don't kind of identify them in that list of important things for your book in particular. But we want to have a good, even just a little bit of a sense of some data here. So Rebecca is saying lives in the U.S., probably leaning toward white women ages 30 and up. That's a great demographic kind of bucket to put people under. And then we can take it a step further, which is our psychographic information. Now, when people think about target markets and marketing, a lot of times they're just thinking about the demographic data, just the high level, like, if you were filling out a survey for something, what are those questions that they're going to ask you? What is that? And just kind of checking through. But the psychographic information is really where things count from a marketing standpoint, but again, also for how you are writing, what conversations that you're having with your people, etc. So, it could be something like their social class, what kind of lifestyle they have, what type of health do they have? Are they in great tip-top shape and health? Do they have some kind of chronic illness? Like what's their background or their upbringing? And what this really helps us get to is how are people thinking? Like that's kind of the way to think about the psychographic information. Is the demographic is more of like kind of the checking the boxes of who they are, but the psychographic is more about their mindset, their kind of their approach to things, what they're thinking about, how they want to be perceived, how they want to show up in the world, all of these types of things. And so I would imagine I know Monica and John in particular, both being coaches, different kinds of coaches, but I feel like with both of what the two of you are doing, the psychographic information is probably going to be very, very important because your job as a coach in so many ways is to kind of get into the mindset of who you're working with and try to help support them from wherever they are. And so knowing the psychographic information can be really powerful in that place. So let's see, Monica's saying most of my clients are at least partly self-employed or want to be. I plan to write a series of books and one will be specific for entrepreneurs. So I'm struggling whether to include that entrepreneur in the first general audience book. That's a tricky one. And then also Monica, and this is splitting hairs for a second, but even thinking about someone who is a small business owner versus someone who is an entrepreneur, those are different people. So some small business owners would never identify as an entrepreneur and some entrepreneurs would never identify as a small business owner. Some of them don't care and kind of intertwine those two types of things. But at the end of the day, you're writing and serving most likely people who kind of fall into both of those. So you'd want to even think through what wording you would want to be using. Like, are you leading with entrepreneur or are you leading with small business owner? I'm just pointing out that there is a little bit of a difference. And that's why this is so important. That's why the psychographics of this is so important, because there's a lot of different connotations to being a small business owner versus an entrepreneur. Like there's definitely nuance to the differences of both of those words. And so what we can all do is we can think about how can we get this information from the people that we serve. So you might, if you have people around you, people in your life, clients that you work with, coworkers that you work with, whomever it might be, you could just reach out to any one of them and say, hey, I'm working on my book. I'm really just trying to nail down a couple of nuances. Would you be willing to fill out this 3-question survey? Boom. And then they fill it out and then you have that information. And then you know with more accuracy which terminology you should or should not use. Hopefully that helps. Okay, so behavioral. So behavioral is really, really important on the marketing side in particular. So this is less around the writing side, much more around the marketing side. The behavioral piece of this is where are they consuming their information? What kind of books do they read? What are their buying habits? What are their patterns? Or will they be ready to buy your book when your book becomes available? What motivates them, what occasions are important. And again, these are just a couple of things to think about, but even the where and how do they read, it could. And like, we as a publisher, we publish our books in all formats. So we by default always do hardcover, paperback, ebook. We have an audiobook partner, and we really encourage our authors to get an audiobook done as well. Some of them don't want to do it, but depending on who your audience is, it's really important to think about where or how are they reading. So if you are targeting an older crowd, for example, and you're targeting somebody who might be in their late 70s, their 80s, maybe even their 90s, you're probably going to want to have a large print book, which, if you aren't familiar with that, it's basically like any other book, but the font size is intentionally larger, so that way people with sight impairments are able to have an easier time reading that material. Or at the very least, maybe they just need an ebook, because with ebooks, the beautiful thing with ebooks is that you can adjust the font size to be whatever size you need it to be. And so you want to be thinking about things like that, where that might be something that matters and it might be important. But we're thinking more about kind of the behavioral patterns. Like, so if they're going to buy your book, who do they trust, is a way to think about it. Who do they trust that would say, yes, you know what, Rebecca's book is awesome, you should go buy it? Who do they trust? So are they listening to podcasts? So if they are, should you be getting on podcast? Are they listening to the local news station? So you want to get yourself on, one of those segments on the news where they're bringing in someone local. These are all things that have a kind of a big impact on the marketing down the road, but are important to kind of be thinking about now. So, as I was saying before, the first three, the geographic, demographic, psychographic, those very much apply to writing and marketing. This one really kind of leans more on the marketing side. And so, quickly, because we have 3 minutes, and like I said, I'm going to stay here and I'm going to stay for a while and answer all of your questions. But for those that do have to leave right at the top of our time, what we can do to get this information, there's three very simple ways. Is just ask questions. Go to your social media, ask people like, hey, I'm writing this book, this is what I'm thinking, what are your thoughts? Or have really specific questions that you can ask them. So you can come up with 2 or 3 questions you can ask, like I was saying before, your clients that you have. You can ask friends, you can ask family, you can ask a trusted kind of group of peers. You can come back into the author lab in the Facebook group and say, hey, I'm trying to figure this out. What does everybody else think? There's almost 700 people in this group, so there's plenty of people who could easily be your target reader. So let's leverage that collective brain power and help you kind of figure out who they are. And then you can find comparable books. So just go into Amazon or Barnes and Noble or wherever and look for books that are similar to yours and try to see if you can figure out who they are writing for. And that can help you figure out who you should be writing for, whether it's similar to them or it's exact opposite of them. But looking at comparable books can certainly help quite a bit. And then just searching the web, and the workbook has more ideas around all of this. But if you go to, so say your target audience would be reading AARP magazine, for example. Go to AARP, go to their website, look at their media kit, and see what demographic and psychographic data points they have on who their readers are, because that's likely going to apply for your readers as well. I think I warned you all that this was going to be a lot of information, that I was going to be throwing at you quite fast. And I hope you're not super overwhelmed by all of this at the moment. But I'm here to answer questions for a good, I'd say, a solid 15 minutes at least. So, how does this feel? How does this feel? I guess just a quick, and then I know that there are some questions I'm going to scroll back up and address. But does this feel overwhelming? Because if it does, you're in good company. This can be overwhelming for a lot of people. What I would suggest to do is just go into the workbook and just answer these questions one by one. Just slow and steady, one by one. And even if you can, and like I said, there's the workbook's probably 6 pages long on just this day alone. Just kind of go in piece by piece and just strike through or just flat out delete the questions that don't apply to you. Like if you really are struggling of like, I don't think this makes any sense, then just delete it or strike it through or do something to it or put like a not available next to it. And if you would like to come back into this Facebook group and just mention and say, hey, here's what I'm writing about. Here's the question that I'm stumped on. Throw it into the Facebook group because I will absolutely provide thoughts on it because a lot of times it's so much easier to see from a lot further away than when we're doing it ourselves. So I could figure out your target reader probably in milliseconds with very limited information. So if you want to bring it in here to the Q&A, ask me now. There's a couple of spots during this whole program where there's just Q&A available. So, just leverage the fact that I'm here and I'm here to support you throughout this. It makes a lot of sense. Hayut, I'm happy that you're here. Makes a lot of sense. Feels overwhelming and so important. I love how you broke it down. It makes so much sense. I'm happy to hear that, Midge. Where can I access the workbook? Marita, if you go into the guides section of this Facebook group, so once this video is not live, or if you're on a desktop, just go into the top on the top part. There's a little button that says guides. Yesterday, I showed my phone as a tutorial, and I can do it again. Let's see. So in the Facebook group itself, all right. So Jesus. So it looks like that. Let's see right where it says message or manage. Actually, yours won't say manage, but it'll be right down there. It says guides. So you just want to hit the guides button, and it'll be the very first thing that you see. It says agenda and workbook. Just go grab it. It's a Google document, so if you're using Google, you can make a copy, or if you want it in a PDF, you can download it as a PDF. I would encourage you to download it as a Word document or something where you can actually manipulate the text so you can actually write in your answers next to everything. But this is a big, big component to this. And it's something that's often overlooked because there's just a lot of, there's a lot of writing programs, there's a lot of writing coaches, there's there's just publishers that don't really understand the marketing side of your book. And so this is one of those things, and I include it really early on because it does influence other things as we get further into this process. So if it's overwhelming, you could say, all right, I'm just going to look at the geographic data today. I'm not going to try to do all of it at once. It's too much for me. I'm just going to look at the geographic data and I'm just going to go through, because again, the workbook has much more information. I'm just going to go through and just write answers to the things that make sense to me. Then I'll come back tomorrow and I'll work on the demographic. Then I'll come back the next day and I'll work on the psychographic. Because we definitely don't want to, I don't want to overwhelm you to a crazy degree. I will say, out of our time together, let me just take a look. I'm pretty sure this is the really intense session. Day 4 is also has a lot of information in it, but day 4 is there's a little bit of math involved. So that's but I'm going to walk you through that so you don't have to worry about being stressed. Yeah, so day 4, yeah, so really it's today and day 4 that are very content heavy. The rest of the sessions are just piecing everything together so you actually do have a plan on the other side of this workshop. And so we will go all the way through Saturday, this coming Saturday. That'll be day 7. Then we will take Sunday off, and I'll be back Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, same time, same bat channel, for additional bonus content that will talk more about the publishing process, if that's something that you want to kind of have an idea about of, now I have this written, what am I going to do with it? Because there's a lot of different paths, and I'm going to break it down a little bit to at least give you something to noodle on and think about what might make sense for you. Then we have another opportunity for a lot more questions, and then more about kind of the planning, like how do we get the plan in place? Because it really just requires a plan. And once you have a plan, at least I feel like in my case and many of the folks I work with, once you have a plan in place, you're in great shape. All right, someone's saying creepy. Okay, it's pretty creepy, but I just found 2 pictures of my target readers from social media and printed them out. Yeah, Cynthia, I know it's creepy, but I'm telling you, it works. It really, really works, as creepy as it feels. I don't know if I am anyone's target reader, but you are welcome to use my picture and you'll still feel creepy about it. But maybe you'll feel less creepy because I've given you permission. But you're welcome to. I don't know if it'll work or not, but you can happily do so. Monica, I'm typing into the workbook and it's really helpful to do it with you. Oh, good. That's awesome. That's why I at the top of the every session, I am always beating the drum of like, get the workbook. I promise. Cause I don't know about you, but I've taken paid programs, I've taken, free workshops and things like that. And a lot of times the workbooks are just, they're not actually helpful. They're just like something to have that, like your website on to remind people of who you are. But mine, I really went out of my way to make sure that it's actually helpful. And like I said, so it's today and then day 4 that you'll need the workbook for day 4. I will tell you that. And then tomorrow will feel easy, but I'm hoping it's going to be like one of those like I've just blown your mind with like simplifying the writing process. That is my goal. I want to simplify the writing process. And I've taught it a lot of times, so I'm pretty sure it'll work, but you can, be the judge of that. All right, let's see. I want to go up and see some of the questions. So if you have questions, feel free to kind of put them in here. All right, I'm going to start with the one that I see now. Pregnancy can change anyone and we never know. How would I get more specific for parents caring for disabled children? If I were you and I were writing about children, children with whatever disability that might exist, I would go to the respective associations and organizations that serve those children and their families. So whether it's autism related, whether it's Down syndrome related, if there's a physical disability, there's associations and nonprofits for every single one of those potential avenues. So I would start there. I would go to their social media channels. I would go to their website, especially nonprofits. Especially the national organizations, typically have really good like sponsorship materials because they're always trying to. This sounds so crass, but like they're trying to make the business case to a sponsor for why a sponsor, a corporation, an entity, a grant should give them money to help the people that they serve. And so when they do that, they have to have a lot of metrics and a lot of data points, oftentimes, especially in grants. And so I would start there. I think that would be a great place because then it'll turn into a big rabbit hole. So you might start with one and then all of a sudden you're down like another layer, another layer, another layer. And before you know it, you'll have all sorts of really good information. Jen, before I go too deep into more writing, is it worth using a writing software? John, yes, absolutely. There is a writing program, and I do not believe it is in the guide section just yet from yesterday because I was traveling yesterday. But it's called Scrivener. It's Scrivener. And if you use Publish Purpose, it'll give you a 20%, like there's a code. It's like a $40 or $50 program. It's not a super intuitive program, I'll just put it that way. But I do have a quick 10-minute kind of starter video of how to use it that I can also post in the guide section for anyone who needs it. I'm making myself a note now. It absolutely, and especially like Monica, for you in particular, because you are writing multiple books or you want to kind of change the lens of the book of like you're starting with the one and then you want to kind of bring it out to other markets. A program like Scrivener will be very, very helpful. It's definitely, and there's probably 10,000 different YouTube videos on how to use certain functions of it. I use like maybe 5% of it, and I've written most of my books in the program, and it's really, really helpful. So I would take a look at it. You might not be a super fan of it. It's worth a shot taking a look. I encourage all of our people, everyone we work with, to use it. But sometimes, if technology is not your friend, just move on. It's okay. Just using a plain old Word document can be fine. The challenge, though, with Word documents or Google Doc or Pages is that once you get deep into the amount of content you have, it becomes really difficult to move your content around. So, for example, if you have 100 pages of your document, and on page 36 there's a couple of paragraphs that belong on page 85, just the simple act of moving them from 36 to 85 can be a colossal pain, because what can happen is that we've cut it, We go to paste it, we accidentally pasted it in the middle somewhere, we can't find it, we have to undo, we have to undo, we have to undo. And then by the time we've undone it all, then we're back where we started, but then it accidentally undid the changes that we just wrote in or the changes that we made. And then before long, you just want to like delete the file and burn your computer. So that's what we're trying to avoid. Whereas a program like Scrivener allows you to just kind of drag and drop content really, really simply, and you can see it very high level. So you can also kind of pick up on themes and trends and information that are also kind of in your book that you wouldn't necessarily have seen otherwise, because the Word document just becomes so unwieldy. And what also happens, as another fun note about Word documents, is that, and this happens, I swear, with, I'm going to say at least 80% of books that we work on, that the first 4 chapters are amazing and the rest are not as amazing. And it's because when we work in a Word document, our brain is operating in a linear fashion where we, instead of just scrolling to work on chapter 5 like our plan was, we're like, oh, I'm just going to browse. I'm just going to scroll through chapter 1. And then before you know it, you've just spent an hour editing and re-editing something that was fine, ignoring what you came in to actually do. And then so your first handful of chapters are in amazing shape because you've edited and edited and edited, but then the rest of them aren't because you never actually get through re-editing the same thing over and over again. And so that's why writing programs can be powerful, because they know that and they have systems built to kind of prevent that from happening. Can you import into Scrivener if you've already written? Yes. Yeah. You can bring in Word documents, PDFs, you can bring in Excel sheets, you can bring in images, you can bring all of the things in. So like when and I have no idea. So I have the 10-minute video that I'll post in here because I saw that Midge would love to see it too. So I don't know what book it was one of my books. I don't know what one I was using as an example. But when I am working on a book, I bring in transcripts, I bring in blog posts, I would bring in, if I was on somebody's podcast, bring that in. And then you can kind of see much more at a high level of what information you have and what information you're missing, which can then help you kind of write to the missing pieces rather than just kind of writing without really having a plan in place. So this whole workshop is about the plan. How do we have a plan in place? All right, I'm going to scroll back up because I know I missed someone's comment. I think this was Cynthia asking, how do I find out Gen Y is reading nonfiction and where they access it? I wonder if they read ebooks, which I'm not planning to do first than I do as a Gen Xer. There are associations, I'm pretty sure it was Cynthia who was asking this. There are associations who have this information, like publishing associations. So if you have any focus on diversity as it relates to, like, if you're writing something that has anything to do with like diversity and you're trying to figure out like the diversity or lack thereof within books themselves, there's a it's like Lilo and something. I'll post that in the thing. Yeah, it's like Lilo something. And they do a lot of diversity statistics. And there's the Independent Book Publishers Association. They might have statistics. I would just go in and type in, like, just go into Google and say, does Gen Y read books? Which obviously they do, but like, how are they reading books? Why, like, where are they reading books? And just kind of see where the Google, the conversation will take you. But just try to find a blog post that is referencing back some reputable organization. Like, just me, blogging about where I think people are reading is not as helpful as actually going to a study that can point to how people are reading. But I know that there's information about there. It could be like part of the library associations might have information on this. What I do know is that oftentimes smaller books are better. The younger the age range, the smaller the book. And even if you're writing for like a really busy executive, short books can really be powerful because they don't have to be huge lengths. And people are impatient. They want their content now. They don't want you yammering on unnecessarily and providing information that's unnecessary. And so a lot of times, like, the more concise we are in a book, the better, which I will get into briefly tomorrow, but absolutely on Wednesday on day 4. Day 4 is really where a lot of this is all going to start to come together. Any other questions? I'm going to keep scrolling up because I'm pretty sure I missed something else. Wow, Cynthia, your comment about your target reader leading a crazy kid-focused life, attending kids' sports, votes, that is real good clarity. Like really good clarity. Oh, Ethel, took me 22 minutes to figure out. I missed the first half. I am sorry that you missed the first half. Facebook does what it wants to do, and sometimes it doesn't alert us. So tomorrow, when you are coming in, just come right into the Facebook group itself. And if you go to the events section and just click on the link, it'll bring you to the YouTube channel where I will be live there as well. And that might save you some time versus missing a piece because Facebook didn't alert you. And if you want to be alerted, go in and actually select that you're going to the events. That will also help Facebook alert you. I had somebody in the last workshop I ran, it took her 17 minutes to get in. I'm like, I don't know why Facebook does this, but they do. I don't think it's intentional. It's just the nature of the program. All right. Any last questions? I think I did get everybody. I see somebody commenting, my mom had a stroke and my son was born with brain damage. Yeah, those are two other, when we were talking about the disabilities before, even looking at associations who support people with strokes, for example, that can be a great place to find resources and further information. All right, are we feeling complete? Are we feeling good? I'm hoping so. Tomorrow will feel significantly less overwhelming, I promise. Tomorrow, I just have a very simple ask of you. I will explain why, and then we will go into the thing, and that will be real easy. But tomorrow's video and tomorrow's work is really important to have done for when you start on Wednesday. And it's not like this worksheet. This worksheet's a lot of information. But you'll want to do tomorrow in order to show up on Wednesday, is what I will say. Facebook didn't alert and didn't start it for a little bit. I went into the event section, listened live, was not highlighted. Weird. Yeah, Midge, I don't know why. I trust me, there'd be many more people live if it just worked the way it was supposed to work. But you got here, and that's all that matters. All right, it looks like everybody is in good shape. If you need anything from me between now and tomorrow, please just tag me, comment where, anywhere in the group. I will see it eventually. And if you have comments as it relates to filling out this target reader worksheet, please just let me know. I'm happy to, happy to support you for sure. All right. All right, I will see you bright and early tomorrow morning. Bye, everyone.